Welcome to this week's Week in Wisdom. This is our opportunity to answer your questions. We have another podcast each week where we interview for about an hour an expert or someone with lived experience on a topic relevant to foster, adoptive, or kinship parenting. But Week in Wisdom is where we answer your questions. So please send us your questions to info@creatingafamily.org, or you can click on the link in the show notes. All right, let's jump right in. This is a question we got from Catherine. She says, "Hi, I have a question for Week in Wisdom. My father-in-law was just diagnosed with terminal cancer and given a maximum of 6 months left to live. We learned this right before our home study for an older child through foster care adoption was finalized. Do you have any advice for what we should do with our adoption process moving forward? I am worried if we match before my husband is done grieving, we could add additional trauma onto the child, but there is no timeline for grieving. How do we deal with our own loss while helping a child get through their loss? Thank you." All right, Catherine, this is a great question. And let me start by stressing that I am not a mental health provider, so I'm answering this question about how I might handle it, not as a professional. And first, I am so sorry for this horrible news about your father-in-law. This is indeed a very tough time for your family. I think the first question I would ask is whether this is the right time to make another big change to your family. There's going to be lots of disruptions in your family life and your schedule during this 6 or so months. There'll be lots of stress, lots of demands on everyone, and of course, lots of grief. And you might consider that right now is not the ideal time to add a new child to the family. Now, how long you wait after your father-in-law dies will really depend on how your husband and kids, assuming that you have other kids, how everybody is dealing. You don't really get over the death of a parent, and you are never really, quote, done grieving, but the intense period of grief should lessen with time. And it seems reasonable to wait for a period of time afterwards to see how everyone is coping and what their bandwidth is for the inevitable ups and downs of adding a new child to the family. I don't think you have to wait until there's no grief left because, well, that isn't realistic. And honestly, that isn't even really desirable. I think, however, you want to wait until the rawness is left and your husband and other kids' energy and ability to cope has refound its equilibrium. And then, honestly, it could be that the experience of going through this loss could help you all better understand what your new child is going through. Empathy is often more powerful than sympathy. Again, I am so sorry that you are dealing with this, and I will keep you and your family in my thoughts during this time. And thanks for submitting your question to Week in Wisdom. And before everyone goes, let me remind you that Creating a Family has a monthly e-newsletter. We curate the best of the parenting resources that we have found that month. It's easy to unsubscribe if it's not meeting your needs. So check it out at creatingafamily.org/newsletter. And I will see you next week.